Welcome to On the Bench Extra. Again, we're discussing everything football from local to international. We also have the thoughts of Paul Hurst after his first home game of the season. This week's head-to-head is the Chip Shot Challenge, and again, you can play along at home and predict the winner. Of course, we're on social media as well, so you can get in touch all the usual ways. But let's start by talking to our first guest, Stu Cox. Thanks for coming in, Stu.
It's all
right. We'll start by looking at Cleetown, Grimsby Borough and North Ferriby. They've got some tasty fixtures this weekend. Cleetown have got Barrow-Wash Victoria in the Cup, and looking at league action, we've got North Ferriby Gloucester and Louthtown Borough, a local derby. So what are your thoughts on those games?
Well, Cleetown will be buoyed by their 6-2 win on the opening day, their first ever time in the Northern Counties Premier Division, and they're going to have a strong season, I think. It was only just the other day I was speaking to someone and he turned around and said the top 10 would be good for Cleetown, but I think they might be able to go one further.
I think they'll be able to go a bit further than that, Stu, yeah, with that opening day win. Louthtown beat Grimsby Borough 7-0 not so long ago in a friendly. Obviously, Grimsby Borough lost the opening game of the season 8-1. So how do you see that game going? It's only going to go one way, surely, according to the stats.
Well, you think of it, you know, Louthtown, it was only nigh on 2 weeks ago in the Barry Brown Field that they beat them 7-0.
Yeah.
And obviously the 8-1 defeat as well. That's
obviously North Ferriby, we will mention, they've obviously got the minerals to go further because obviously last season there was finishing the playoffs. And they've got Gloucester, they're a good side. Just quickly, how do you think they all get on? What do you predict for that?
2 wins and a draw.
Do you think confidence from that game can then push them on to maybe playoffs again this season?
I reckon North Ferriby will be there or thereabouts this season, definitely.
I'll have to agree with you actually on that one, Stu. Yeah. Looking ahead to this weekend's other fixtures then, Grimsby face Dover, Scunthorpe host Preston and Hull start their campaign away at QPR. Before we discuss those though, this is what Paul Hurst had to say after their 0-0 draw on Tuesday night against Nuneaton.
It was crying out for someone of the ilk of Scott Nielsen or Nathan Arnold, Jack McCreath. I thought we played some really good stuff. You know, we moved the ball well, and when you're up against a team that just come in really trying to break on you, certainly the longer the game went, everyone back in their own half, it's difficult. We just didn't quite have that killing edge or that bit of luck. Hopefully we're getting all as bad luck out of the way now, and there'll be a lot more to come, but we've certainly carried on from the second leg at the end of last season at this moment in time. Paul Bignett should be back in on Thursday. We'll see how he trains. Chris Doig is a possibility. John Paul Pittman should be training Thursday in terms of the attacking sense. Don't think Ross will be. Looking at us at this moment in time, I guess he's going to be struggling. Nathan Arnold, slight possibility.
Obviously, as Paul Hurst highlighted then, the squad is depleted. They've got a lot of bodies missing. I think, obviously, speaking to him on Tuesday, I think he was happy with that result. Albeit 0-0, I think he was happy, taking the squad conditions into consideration.
With 9 players out injured, though, you're bound to be happy with 0-0. That's 2 clean sheets in a row. The defence looks solid. It's mainly the attacking players that are out injured for Grimsby at the moment. And once they start coming back in, like you said, they played really well on Tuesday against Nuneaton.
I've seen comments from a lot of fans, and actually they're quite pleased. They're looking. Yeah. I've seen comments they're solid as a unit. Defensively, they look strong. So you say get the flair players back, and they're a force. Scott Brown looked fantastic in midfield. The 2 fullbacks look great. They found the space, and I think a lot of the chances come from that.
We've got youngsters on the bench as well, which is only good for the future. You look at the bench on Tuesday; it was 5 youth teamers.
Yeah, Kane Winfarrell looks promising as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Scunthorpe. Obviously, they had an opening day defeat against Swindon. Not ideal, but they bounced back in the cup on Tuesday.
Oh, it was a fantastic win.
Away at Blackburn, 1-0. So that's a fantastic result, beating a championship club. What do you think to that game?
Well, obviously the defeat against Swindon, it's going to knock confidence down. Everybody starts the season hoping for that elusive first one. If it doesn't happen, and the longer it goes, teams do jade. And
what do you think about Hull's chances then at QPR? 3 points at QPR, is that going to be possible for Hull? Obviously the Premier League starts this weekend. Hull's first game.
Anything's possible in the Premier League. We've seen that last season. Hull were beating some of the big teams but losing to some of the teams that went down. I think it's key that they stay as a unit, and I think it's going to be a lot harder to get points off QPR this season. If you know what I mean, it's going to be harder.
Yeah,
to
obviously it's not an opening day at Old Trafford. It's an opening day against QPR, which I don't think Hull could have asked for any more, really. It's a good start, I think.
It is.
Well, of course, this week, Hardy and myself had to endure another challenge. Let's see what happened this week. 3 out of 5 isn't bad. And you can see Hardy's attempt in part 2, so stick around for that. This week's Sack or Stick spotlight is on former Hull City boss Nigel Pearson, now at Leicester City. So Stu, I got some stats to squirt at you about this. Nigel Pearson's win rate at Leicester is 51%. At Hull City it was 35%. So he's improved. So what are your thoughts on Nigel Pearson at Leicester?
Well, obviously I think they've got to stick with him, to be fair, even if they are in bother come Christmas or towards the end of the season. That win ratio there says it all. That's over half his games.
Well, obviously last season they were promoted as champions. Season before they were in the playoffs, so he is improving the club season by season. As you say, if he's in the bottom 5 at Christmas, do you stick with him or do you give him the boot?
I've never agreed of sacking the manager just because, you know, they're going for a sticky patch. We've seen it before. David Moyes, one of them last season. Who knows what he could have gone on to do this season? You just don't know. That's
true. Obviously, they've got key players. He's got key players at his disposal with definitely. Premier League experience. Konchesky, Upson, Albrighton, Nugent, you know, some great players there.
Sir Michael might not have the experience, but
how important are those players to Nigel?
Well, they're very important. The key players, as you've just said, Nugent with his goals, and there's positions there everywhere across the pitch where it could make a difference. Another one to watch out for there, well, another couple of midfielders, Danny Drinkwater and Andy King. I think they're going to have good seasons.
Yeah, obviously experience isn't always key. Some of the new boys flourish in the league.
Yeah.
At Hull, though, he did win 23 out of 64 games. He won 72 out of 140. So, you know, as a manager overall, he's not bad, I think. He gets results.
He gets the squad working for him, I think. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think you're right actually there, Stu. Focusing more on Hull City now, they are one step closer to the Europa League group stage. Can they juggle Premier League and Europa League football then, Stu? Obviously, it's going to be tough, so I've got a few things to throw at you. You know, if they do qualify for the Europa League, can they contend with that up until Christmas at least? Well,
we saw it with Wigan last season. Obviously, they got relegated after winning the FA Cup, went into the Europa League. Everyone was like, Wigan are going to go straight back up. Got into the Europa League, as we've just said. And then it kind of faded a little bit towards the end because it's, you know... Have
they got a big enough squad to compete in both? Because obviously, as we know, they might have a big enough squad for the Premier League, but then you've got Europa League on top of that. You know, do you think Bruce feels confident? You know, what does he think?
It'll be an amazing journey for him if they do go through to the Europa League. They've got a tough task, though, in the last qualifying round against Locker and Belgium. And they're a team with a lot of European experience.
Bruce, again, he could be a victim of his own success. You know, obviously, if he is doing well in Europa League and gets out the group stage, and the league is, you know, they're suffering in the league, you know, bottom 5 at Christmas, does Bruce stay? Do you get rid of him?
Well, it says it all, doesn't it, really? It shouldn't be like that. Steve Bruce has worked wonders for all. Who would have thought you'd seen them in the FA Cup final come May?
And being 2-0 up at one point.
Yeah, after 15, 20 minutes.
If it was me, I think I'd keep Bruce, despite, you know, bottom 3 at Christmas. All right, you know, there's still a chance to recover from that position. But again, the Europa League, I don't think they'll make massive financial gains from that. But it's what the exposure it can give for the club, and obviously it's a great thing for the fans. You know, might want to renew season tickets. So just quickly, what are your predictions on the Europa League for Hull?
I think they'll go through to the group stage, but I think it's going to be a little step too far for them to get out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Stu. Well, that's it for part 1, but before we go, here's a half-time teaser. What is Scunthorpe United's highest ever defeat, and who against? Welcome back to Extra. Before the break, I asked you what was Scunthorpe United's highest ever defeat. It was 8-0 versus Carlisle United in 1952. Just continuing on from where we left off in part 1, we were talking sack or stick with Nigel Pearson. Let's move on to another manager, or managers, I should say. Stu, Premier League title contenders and relegation favourites. Yep. Who do we think? Majority of people's relegation odds are going towards Burnley, QPR and Leicester.
3 promoted teams.
Yeah, what do you think to that?
Well, I think it's ridiculous how people, they count off, you know, the 3 promoted teams. Burnley won't do nothing.
But statistically, they are the 3 weakest sides in the league because they've come up from the Championship. There's already 17 Premier League sides there that have been in it already the season before.
It doesn't matter. We've seen it before. The 3 promoted teams have stayed up, and 3 Premier League teams from the season before have
on
gone
paper,
down.
Though, do Burnley, QPR and Leicester realistically have better squads than the teams already in the league?
I think QPR should do okay. I don't think they'll have a repeat of the last time.
Do you think Redknapp can work his magic and keep them in the league this time round?
You look at some of the players they bought Colker, Rio Ferdinand. There's 2 experienced centre-backs. I think that's what was missing.
Again, Leicester, we've already mentioned them in the first part of the show. Have they obviously got key players? Have they got a good enough squad to stay in the league?
I think the squad is all right. I think they just might need 1 or 2 tweaks. Someone who can bring a little bit extra.
Do you agree that Burnley are the favourites to go down? Do you agree with that?
I can see why they are, but they were a close-knit squad, and it's sometimes the close-knittedness of the squad that gets them through and might even keep them up come May.
Yeah, West Brom, Villa and Palace are all the next 3 teams to go down, and then Hull are the 7th team, a favourite to go down. 3-1 for Hull to go down. How do you feel Hull have then? We'd obviously mentioned them in the first half again, but let's look at them for relegation. Will they go down?
No, it depends on Europa League and injuries. Injuries do play a big part of this season, no matter what.
We've seen it in the past though. Teams have, good cup runs, other distractions, and then ultimately they suffer.
If a Premier League team do go down though, my money's on West Brom.
It's now time for the second instalment of this week's head-to-head. First half saw me score 3, so let's see if Hardy can better that and become champion this week. So, Hardy scores 4 out of 5, and unfortunately for me, is this week's winner.
You might have
I think it's fixed. I'll get it next week. Now, we turn to the back pages of the papers to see what's making headlines this week. Let's start with the Hull Daily Mail. And we're going with, will Bruce stick to trusted formula for the QPR clash? Basically, 3-5-2's worked for him in pre-season. They're saying he's got the best squad in Hull City's history. Do you agree, Stu? What do you think to that?
Well, I think it is obviously the best squad in Hull City's history. They're in Europe. They haven't been there before. If it's worked in pre-season and he thinks it's going to work against QPR, then why should he change it? Pre-season is for looking at these little nibbles and nicks of squads.
If it's worked for, United, then it's going to work for Hull, surely. Am I right in saying that, or do you disagree?
Nah, that's total.
He's got the players.
Wrong.
I mean, he has got the best squad, I think, that they've ever had, which is, I think, fantastic for Hull City supporters.
Yeah.
Let's turn to the Sun. This is sort of an international kind of story. Courtois, Chelsea's goalkeeper, he's been told to be number 1 keeper for Chelsea, or he's not playing for Belgium again.
I think that's.
What do you think to that?
I think that's a load of codswallop. That is one of the best keepers around in the world.
He's a very young, promising goalkeeper. Is it fair to put that pressure on him? Will it affect his career?
Well, I think he will end up being number 1 at Chelsea. Maybe not straight away. I think Petr Cech will be the number 1 for the start of the season.
Do you think the international boss for Belgium sort of saying that to hurry Mourinho up and get him in the goal? Is it a bit of mind games?
I think it is something to do with mind games, and obviously the Belgian manager wants him to be playing football because he's the best goalkeeper Belgium have got. That's
correct, Stu. Looking at the Grimsby Telegraph then, from a goalkeeper to a striker. Alan Connell back at Grimsby Town. Obviously a lot of people will have a lot to say about this. I've already seen comments on social media. Obviously Alan Connell's hinted that he may welcome an even longer stay with the Mariners. Can he beat 29 goals he scored last season, and will he stay longer? Well, if he wants to stay longer, that's what he's saying. It's not just down to him, though. It's obviously down to the chairman and the club, whether they can afford him. He hasn't had much of a pre-season, so we haven't really seen the best of Alan Connell. And as you said, 29 goals in a season last time he was at Grimsby is fantastic. Watching him on Tuesday, he did look a bit tired, a bit lacklustre. So I think he's obviously not at full fitness. But I think if he can, get 10, 15 goals a season, it's still adding to the Mariners squad. And I think that's fantastic for him. Even if it's just till the end of the year, just to see it through, I think Alan Connell will have another productive season. Once he's fully fit, though,
And once these players come back, that can only complement one of the strikers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Linnell John-Lewis would benefit from Connell's fitness and his movement off the box. They worked well together last season. And 29 goals for someone in the conference is fantastic.
It is.
I mean, we'll come back to that, Stu. We can talk about that all day long.
We can.
Right, now we can hear from Paul Hurst again as he looks ahead to this weekend's clash against Dover. Two teams who have never met before. I also asked him his thoughts on Kane Winfarrer.
We will obviously be doing everything we can to take them and try and sort of stay with the early pace setters. I'm not sure what the squad will be, in truth, come Saturday. Hopefully, yeah. I mean, tonight, look, we were by far the dominant team, basically playing, as I said, with not the way that I would choose to play if everyone's available to me. The reports I had on Dover are they are a very big physical team. That's the one aspect looking at Kane that is obviously not his strength, certainly at this moment in time. But on the ball, I thought he did pretty well for us. He saw a lot of it, and that can be difficult for a young lad. You know, at half time he admitted he was a little bit nervous. Yeah. Understandable. I said to him, if we were on the training ground, would you be nervous? He wouldn't. Well, just get on with it then. And, you know, keep wanting the ball, and he was brave enough to do that second half.
Well, I think Paul Hurst and a lot of the fans were impressed with Kane Winfarrer's performance last night. So it's his first season as a senior pro. Obviously, he said as well that Dover are quite a large side, big blokes. So Kane might struggle against those. But what are your thoughts on the game this weekend against Dover? Is it a must-win for Town?
Well, I think after 2 draws, 2 0-0s, the fans want to see some goals. We want to see some goals. We want to see the local sides doing well. But at the minute, the 2 draws, 2 0-0s, it's not the best start to the season, but it's certainly not the worst.
Well, before the show, I tried to look at some stats for these two teams, but they've never met before. So obviously Paul Hurst is taking a stab in the dark against this side. He's never played them. You know, what can he expect from Dover? You know, obviously they've just come up from Conference
Well,
South.
I think like most of the teams that do come up from the North and South are going to be very physical. As he said, they're a big squad. And we're not talking about quantity, we're talking about
the size of the guys.
Yeah, we're talking
obviously,
about size.
As Nuneaton did, if Dover come and put 10 men behind the ball, have Grimsby got the quality and the patience to break that team down?
Well, as you heard in the press conference, it's to do with who comes back. It's if Pittman comes back, he could make the difference. If Hannah's back, he could make the difference. If Arnold's back, the thing what was missing on Tuesday was 2 wingers. That was our problem, and we're playing a formation to suit what we've got at the moment rather than what the manager actually wants to play.
I think that's what Paul Hurst said. He's making the most of what he's got. Bring all the lads back that are out injured, and you've got a different kettle of fish when it comes to the Mariners, and they will be up there, I think.
I think it'll be another good season.
Well, we're out of time for this week. Please join us next week right here on Estuary TV for more football talk and another head-to-head challenge. Don't forget to find us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can email us on the bench at estuary.tv, and your message could feature on next week's show. Thanks to Stu Cox and to you for watching. For this week, it's goodbye.